success really early in my career meant not having to be the expert at everything, but being curious, asking questions, trusting other people, and knowing, like, look, at the end of the day, I know what the end result needs to look like, mostly because I've either been told or I've been able to figure that out, but I don't have to have all the answers. And most often, to be really frank, most often I didn't, and probably to this day still don't. And so learning early on that success looks like trusting other people, motivating other people, going on the journey with other folks. I think for me, probably the secret sauce to being successful. At the end of the day, the patient is the ultimate recipient of the work that we do. And so success really looks like service.
Yeah.
Welcome to Limitless Minds, the podcast where curiosity meets greatness. If you're ready to discover what it takes to be truly limitless and push beyond your own limits, you're in the right place.
DJ, I'm so excited today because we have an amazing guest coming back at it. New year, new guests, new people. Yes. And Scott, we're bringing in Scott Jones. Scott Jones is a close friend of ours. We've met him at J&J. We were doing an event for Johnson & Johnson, and he and I just got to talking during a tech check. And I didn't really even know who he was. He was just somebody who was hanging out with us. And then we started chatting, and he hands me his card and is like, "Oh, like you're the guy." So who Scott is he's the Senior Director of Learning Excellence. Think about that. What a great title. Yeah. Senior Director of Learning Excellence at Johnson & Johnson. He's a military veteran. He spent 5 years as an officer in the Air Force, and he spent about 27 years in the biotech medical device industry. He is a change. This is what it says on his bio, which I love. Scott is a change agent who drives positive behavior change and transforms good teams into great teams. And so we're going to bring in Scott in just a second here. But really, when you get to know him, you'll see why. This is one of the best leaders that you and I have ever met in any field, whether it be the sports world or the industry, pharmaceuticals, medical, whatever it might be. Scott is one of the great leaders, and when you spend time with him, you just want to spend more time with him. So, yes. Any other thoughts on Scott before we bring him in?
No, I think the only thing I would add is that there's some real great nuggets in here, and I don't want to do the spoiler alert, but I do want to make sure people listen, because if you're a leader that's dealing with any kind of challenge, change, adversity, pressure, uncertainty, this is one you're going to really want to listen to.
Yeah, he's a master at dealing with, I don't want to, whatever, challenging is the word I'm going to use, but he is a master at making the challenging doable, really, and doing it with pride and getting the team to be motivated, excited, and feel really seen and heard. Yes. So without further ado, let's bring in Scott Jones.
Scott Jones.
Without further ado, welcome in Scott Jones. Again, I met Scott probably about 4 years. I want to say 4 years ago in Chicago. We were doing our sound checks for a presentation I was going to be giving to Johnson & Johnson, and Scott was there. We just started shooting the breeze, and sure enough, we had a lot in common and understood the power of the mindset. So, so we met you in Chicago, Scott, but here's what we want to know. Like, what was going on before that? Not just like the 5 minutes before you got on the plane to fly in, but like, we're talking about, your childhood, your pre-Johnson & Johnson career. How did you end up where you are? I think that's kind of what we want to know.
We want old school. We want old school Scott Jones. That's what we want.
A nice broad paintbrush. What got you into this world of leadership and pharma and just, that bold, broad question for you. Good luck with it. Here you go.
Awesome. Well, good morning. And by the way, what you left out of that whole conversation was when we were in Chicago, I think you were wearing a World Series ring, pretended like it was no big deal. You just happened to be in Chicago and like talked about the love of the losers. Like there was a whole thing, right? So anyways.
Exactly. But, exactly. I do. When I do wear that, it's very casual. It's just very casual. Nobody notices it. It's very subtle.
No, small. Small ring.
Yeah, DJ and I don't have one.
That's right. Exactly,
Scott. I got a couple of things to borrow. You can just hand them out to the championships.
Yeah, look, let me maybe I'll give you like a little hint, like what happened prior to Chicago, like going back. So look, I grew up in a family, a military family. I'm the oldest of three kids. We're all 2 years apart. I'm actually third generation military. So my grandfather fought World War II, fought in Korea. My father was a fighter pilot, Air Force Academy grad. My middle brother, Air Force Academy grad pilot.
Oh my gosh.
My youngest actually went to the academy, had a medical thing. But yeah, like my family was grounded that way. So I think from a really young age, I grew up in a household that was very value-based, very much around helping others. And that was sort of how I grew up. And then, go figure, after college, I ended up 5 years officer in the Air Force before I come over and start my career in J&J. So, yeah. There's the Cliff Notes version.
Did you do like ROTC or anything like that in college? Or was it like you graduated college, you're like, look I think, I got the degree. I kind of want to go into the military now.
It's funny. I started ROTC my second year of college. I was a sophomore in college. And I didn't really have the military bug the way that even my brothers did. But I got, when I was in high school, I remember my dad coming home. He was a pilot for 30 years with Southwest. And he came home from a trip and he's like, hey, how was your week? I'm like, you're going to laugh, Dad. I said, a recruiter called me this week, asking about the military. It was really not top of mind for me. And then as I got into college and started realizing, wanted more direction, wanted an opportunity to grow really fast, I landed on the Air Force as a place that would kind of help stretch me. And so that shaped me really early.
That's awesome. Where'd you go to college?
Undergrad, University of Arizona. So,
my brother went to Arizona State. I think we've talked about this, so we may have to end this call right now.
It's funny. So did my brother and my sister-in-law. So, of all the things we talk about, we try not to talk collegiate sports because we don't get along.
That's so funny. Is it when you look back at whether it's childhood or even college, did you think and did you ever imagine yourself being in a role in a position like you're in today?
No, I think that there are people both in my family and probably even in my social circle that really knew from a young age what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. I don't know that was me. I was very much more live in the moment, take what's given to you. Didn't know what I didn't know. So I didn't really have this idea of, what would leadership look like, or what would contributing to a meaningful career, what could that possibly look like? And so my ideas were all over the board. I went to school and studied media arts, media management. I thought I was actually going to be working in a TV studio. Okay. And I learned pretty quickly. It wasn't something I was passionate about. As much fun as it was to watch TV and movies in college, it wasn't a career choice for me. So for me, I really had no idea that this would be a place where I ended up.
Yeah, when you look back and you think about your family's military background, is there one or two things that you learned, from them, watching them, that sticks with you as a leader today?
Yeah, probably in hindsight. I don't know that I realized it at the time, but I think when I look back on the way I was raised, I always knew there was a right way to do things. And there was a wrong way to do things. Rules were in place for a reason. I didn't always understand why. Not going to lie, I probably didn't always follow those rules, but having systems, having structure, having guidance or guidelines to guide, whether it's what you do on a minute by minute basis or daily or yearly basis, those values were something that from a very young age, I just knew what right and wrong was. And those were the rules that I played within, for the most part.
And it's interesting too, because now, I'm going to go back to this in a second. I'm going to ask the question in a second, but you had told me kind of what your role was in the military. It's not the normal. It didn't seem like a role that I think about when I think about the military. So could you kind of, enlighten DJ and the audience about kind of what your role was and kind of how that shaped everything too?
Yeah. So I had a couple of different roles. I was a personnel officer, which I think that the closest explanation to what you might experience in the civilian sector is a personnel officer is sort of like a human resources type of a role.
Right.
And so that's actually what you get assigned, your specialty. That was my specialty. That's what I went to trade school for eventually. And I did that for probably the first, maybe only 9 months, in a really kind of more technical space before I was asked to go out and do another part of that, which was a little bit more like general management. So I was actually placed into a unit, into a squadron, and I was literally 9 months out of college, and I was in a squadron of about 260 people, and I was basically put there and asked to help reshape the culture. There had been some leadership that hadn't built like a really strong, cohesive culture. There was a concern that we weren't going to be able to mobilize the unit. It was a supply chain unit, and so I came in at a super early part of my career and had an opportunity to start learning people leadership, how to motivate people, how to change behavior. And then I guess the last part of the career was then I walked into a staff meeting one day, and the general of the base, the commander, said, "Hey, by the way, Scott, you're going to be our protocol officer." I didn't even know what a protocol officer was.
Yeah, can you explain what that is? Because I don't think many people do.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's a common career field anymore, but essentially I was responsible for helping organize any of the visits or collaboration with any of our distinguished visitors. And so I did that in my first duty station. Secretary of Defense comes in, wants to inspect what we're doing to prepare for, pick what the mission was. And I'm coordinating all of the details, whether it's the briefs we give, the logistics and coordination, all the people that need to get involved. And so it could be somebody like the Secretary of Defense. It could be a 4-star general. It could be all that. And then that opportunity actually led me to actually getting assigned to a unit in Italy, which was super busy based on where we were at the time with the Kosovo conflict. And so now I'm working, I'm coordinating visits with, the White House for the president, for Sec Defense, like all the people, all the generals. And it was fascinating because it's super high visibility. The pace is almost unmanageable, and it's constant. Wow. And so you learn a lot really quick, but, and then there's also things like, making sure you actually understand military protocol, like when so-and-so is on stage, which side of the stage does the flag sit on? How do you open the conversation? So all of those details I had to quickly kind of get schooled up on so that I could help represent the organization.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And is there anything that you remember from that role that sticks out in how you apply things from a leadership perspective today?
Maybe the thing that's maybe most fun. I mean, so it was a grind, right? So we're involved in the Kosovo conflict. You can imagine it's busy. It's all the time. Yeah. Like when the president says he's coming over to come thank the troops, the president just doesn't show up. He shows up with like 250 of his closest friends, and every, president, prime minister, ambassador, and everybody wants to be there. So you get used to the pace. But I think one of the things that I learned early on is you got to find the moments of like levity and fun. And so you balance that like super hard work, really long days, things that don't seem possible at the time with, I got to meet the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders or Christy Brinkley or whoever the guests were that were coming to keep the troops kind of motivated. And those were moments you just don't take for granted. Or even like when the president comes, right? Like not a lot of folks get an opportunity to meet the president. It was super stressful to prepare for the visit. But when the president spends 5 minutes with you, shaking your hand, thanking you, like those are moments that you kind of have to soak it up while you're in, at least for me. Yeah. And that for me was a lot of fun.
Yeah. It sounds like gratitude was a driving force for you that allowed you to manage the stress of the constant, having to check and cross T's, dot I's, having to look at this, look at that, and make sure everything's in place and is in a go setting. Right. And so it sounds like, you just being able to step back for a second, have some gratitude, be thankful for where you are. That allowed you to manage that.
Yeah, Josh. And look, I think in the conversations we've had over the years, gratitude has been at the forefront. Mm-hmm. I would also, you're not wrong in that, in kind of picking up on that. The piece around gratitude that I think you also reflect on, especially as a leader, is the people that you get to work with. So whether it's the people that worked directly for me, those that worked around me, but especially in the military, I see the same in my corporate career. But when I was in the military, you're constantly needing to rely and trust those around you. And when you're in those like really high pressure situations, knowing who you can trust and how you can trust them gives a lot more gratitude to the fact that, hey, I actually trust we can deliver what we've been asked to do. And knowing what you can achieve with and through others, I think is also another point of gratitude.
Yeah, no doubt. We, Scott, you've heard us, say before, success leaves clues. When when you think about success, how would you define success today versus when you were early in your career?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think early in my career, success for me, I was given a lot of responsibility way earlier in my life and career than I probably thought that I deserved it, which was a little bit of the military way of life. 2 days after graduating college, I have 25 or so people reporting directly to me, asking me questions I don't even know the answer to because and so, success really early in my career meant not having to be the expert at everything, but being curious, asking questions, trusting other people, and knowing, look, at the end of the day, I know what the end result needs to look like, mostly because I've either been told or I've been able to figure that out, but I don't have to have all the answers.
Right.
And most often, to be really frank, most often I didn't, and probably to this day still don't. And so learning early on that success looks like trusting other people, motivating other people, going on the journey with other folks. I think for me, probably the secret sauce to being successful earlier than I thought I was probably ready to do it.
Yeah.
And I'd say a lot of those same traits probably carry into what I do today and how I lead today. And even the people I try to surround myself with is, at the end of the day, in the work that I'm doing now, our work impacts patients. And so we try to keep, at the end of the day, the patient is the ultimate recipient of the work that we do. And so the questions that I'm asking, the questions that the team around me are asking, we're trying to do a better job so that we can deliver on behalf of patients. And often, most of the time, we don't get to see those patients, know those patients. But it's this idea that every single thing that we do makes an impact on somebody else. And so success really looks like service.
Yeah.
I like that. That's great.
Yeah, it seems even that's part of your leadership too. Is that it sounds like every time I talk to you, it feels like this too. Just so you know, but it feels like I'm going to be beside you. I'm not going to be above you. I'm not going to be in front of you. I'm going to be beside you, and we're going to walk this thing together.
Yeah.
And I think you talk about servant leadership. It's different than that. It seems like growth together. Right, like that. I don't know what the right term is. I haven't. Maybe this is going to be a book for you, Scott. Like, what is that? What is that term in terms of like how do you lead beside your team versus above or behind or for? It sounds. I just have this image of you with your arm around somebody and you're just walking through whatever you're walking through.
Well, Josh, also like to kind of add to that. It makes sense, because Scott, we've probably known each other, or at least been around each other for like the last 6 years, probably, like in some form or fashion.
It's been a minute, yeah.
It's been a minute, yeah. And the thing that stands out to me the most is, and you've mentioned both of them, is that servant leadership, but also the curiosity aspect. Like, to walk alongside somebody, and they talk. I hear a lot of people talking about this when you want to have a one-on-one with somebody, you should go on a walk, like be beside them, right? Physically beside them. I think Scott does, whether it's over a Zoom, whether it's live, does an amazing job of asking great questions to get a better understanding before he tries to provide a whole bunch of direction. And that's something that I really respect and admire of you. Is that something that was inherent in you, Scott, or is that something that has evolved over time?
Certainly, I'm sure it's evolved over time. Go back to the example I just spoke about, where I spent 5 years as an officer in the Air Force. Almost every single person that worked around me or for me had more experience and a lot more technical capability than I did. So I learned early on, like I couldn't possibly go it alone and have success. In fact, I never actually wanted to. I don't know where that came from, but it was this, maybe it was team sports growing up, but being part of a team and seeing the team collectively do something was far more rewarding. So for me, I think some of that's been built in from the beginning, like almost out of like survival instinct. Like, okay, some super daunting task just got handed to me by my commander. I have no idea what this even means half the time, especially early on. And it took a while to find the right people, rally the team, seek their advice, ask questions to make sure that their plan was the one that I thought could get there, even though I didn't even fully understand sometimes like what the mission was. and then understanding like, what is my role? Like, where do I actually fit in? Where can I help you? Where can I help the team? What do you expect out of me so that we can actually deliver whatever this big daunting result might be, and being able to cut through that with a team, whether it was in the military or in my corporate career, it's far more rewarding. And so, there's always evolution, but I think for me, because of the way that, my career started in the military, I think it probably started at a younger age.
Yep. Yeah, it makes sense. It's funny because I wanted to, we kind of glossed over this, but I wanted to go back because you had mentioned like one of your first tasks in the military was go into this supply chain group whose culture is a little bit wonky and fix their culture. And I'm kind of curious about that. Like, how did you, were you successful in doing that? And then B, if you were successful, what were kind of like your first steps in that? And because I think a lot of the leaders that are listening to this, DJ, and agree with me if you will, but like, I think they're put in charge and there's lots of change going on, and maybe it was a bad fit culturally, or, a lot of the leaders that we work with, they get moved around a lot because they're solid at what they do, and a different division needs some uplifting. So hey, let's put this person in. Let's put Scott Jones in charge. Yeah, that would be a really good move by you, right? So how does that? What was that like for you? And again, you're 22 years old, right at this point. Is that accurate? 22, 23 years old. So you're young.
I'm like 22, 23. I'm young. Yeah.
So what were the steps there to change the culture, and did it work?
Yeah. Look, from my point of view, I do think it worked, but like. I didn't know the supply chain world. I didn't even know what the people that were working into this organization did on a daily basis.
Right.
I wasn't handed a playbook that says, here's the problem with the culture. I was told a little bit why. There was a commander that had a really rough style, was going through something personally with a divorce. And so I knew I had to learn. So I literally went on a walking tour, listening tour. And my team at the time, these 260 some odd people, were spread all across the base I was working at. They weren't all in like one location. They were in different places. Some of them were on the flight line delivering fuel. Some people were in a warehouse. And so I literally went from team to team to team. And I just started having conversations, having lunch, grabbing a coffee, asking questions. What do you love about your job? Why did you choose this career field? If you could do something different, what would it look like? Like just asking questions to pop the hood, knowing that especially in the military, you wear your rank on your shoulder. So there is sort of like this, it's not always like the most communicative process, like where somebody who's more junior in the organization says, I'm just going to spill my guts to this, lieutenant at the time.
Right.
And so finding the right people and asking the right questions and just trying to have more human interactions, where it didn't seem like I was above them. I was just learning, like, hey, you chose a pretty cool career field. Talk to me about it. And just by doing a listening tour and then starting to validate what I would hear in one situation that would lead into another, it became pretty clear what some of those issues were. And even things, so I looked for quick wins. There were little things like in the past, the organization would get together the week of Thanksgiving and they would have a potluck. Right? They'd get together in a warehouse, have a potluck, and they would break bread together. And that had been taken away as like, no, we're not doing that stuff anymore. We're not getting together as a team. And so like as a quick win, I just asked the commander, I said, hey, look, you got to give me an opportunity to get this team together. Let's break some bread for Thanksgiving. It'll be fun. And he's like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, cool. You don't have to. Guess what? I'm going to go out there with the rest of the leadership team. We're just going to have a nice time. Just little wins like that started to show up differently. Having a monthly, we called it at the time, I created like a commander's call, which was like just a chance to like hear from the team. Like, what's on your mind? What do you need? What's getting in the way of you being successful in your job? And some of those really human moments, even though they probably don't sound like a big deal, allowed me pretty quickly to diagnose where I thought there were opportunities to improve morale. And it gave me a little bit of a connection with the team so that I had some credibility pretty quick because I was listening.
Yeah, it's almost like you changed it from, okay, here we are, and we're just tasked with execution, and we belong to the job versus we are a part of a team. And that shift sounds like it can make really, it's interesting too, because you talk about the small wins. I just thought immediately to Ted Lasso, which I'm sure you've seen, but like his first big win, if for those of you who haven't seen it, is he changes the shower heads. He changes his shower heads because the shower heads were really bad in the locker room. And and somebody commented on it and he fixed it. And they were like, oh, like I'm getting listened to. right? It was like a moment. It was a moment, right? And it shifted some of the key players' mentalities. And I think that's the thing for you. Like, hey, let's be together. Let's be part of something versus just execution all the time.
Yeah, and that kind. I wish I would have had you when I was a new leader in pharma, Scott. Because I mean, what you just said, that listening tour. If you're listening to this right now, that I've never actually heard that terminology. That could be either a chapter or name of a book, Scott, for you.
The listening tour.
Write these down.
The listening tour. But how profound is that? Like, I mean, just to be able to say, like, I'm not. This is not just a one-time thing I'm doing. We're going to go on a tour of listening to really understand, so that, because if you're listening, whether you're Ted Lasso or Scott Jones, right, what you're going to do is you're going to find a challenge, some adversity that you could solve for and get that quick win, and that's going to create a ton of buy-in for your team. So I love that. That's a really simple kind of recipe and framework that anybody can use that's listening to this podcast. Scott, as I'm thinking about kind of your journey, I know we talked a lot about kind of some of the organizations that you've been with, whether it's military or J&J, but what about like those mentors? Is there somebody, a leader or a mentor, that stands out in your mind that's really made an imprint on you?
Yeah, there's a few, probably, in all the different, spots that I've been. I find myself, interestingly enough, I gravitate towards folks that have given me enough freedom to actually have a point of view and be able to lead some of the work I'm leading, but also have the courage to stand up and try to challenge my thinking. Or, and I'm thinking of one specific individual right now who, I don't know, probably almost 10 years ago was asking me questions and saying, why are you going to do this? And getting to the root of what I was doing, and then said, I absolutely love that initiative. Let me ask you one question. It was the one question that then said, I had missed something in how I was trying to solve a problem. And it was the 95% of the stuff that I had built for what I was working at the time, he loved. It was the one thing that I was missing. And instead of telling me it was wrong, he asked me a question. It allowed me to actually self-realize, have a conversation. I'm like, well, hold it. Actually, if I added this, and he's like, yeah, give it a shot. And so I have found a few of those mentors over time don't always give you the answer, right? Sometimes it's around, asking the right question, and they're looking at you as well. They want to know, like, at least in my situation, is he tracking? Does he get it? Or does he need a lot more handholding and coaching? And so for me, I think it's a really important leadership lesson that I've picked up on.
It's great.
That's really awesome. So that's a positive leadership lesson. One of the things I've learned through my career is that, our success leaves clues, but so does failure. So I'm just kind of curious about what some of those, like, in terms of, like, leadership don'ts. We talk about, sometimes it's easier to eliminate behaviors than it is to add them. So what is something that you've seen, maybe through your own personal experience or, whatever, what are those things that you've seen that don't work in the leadership realm?
Yeah. It's funny. As soon as you asked the question, like, I had two situations come like front of mind. So I can think of one situation where I had a new manager that got assigned, which, you work long enough, you're going to have, a new manager probably every year and a half or so. And this woman was like super, I was in a marketing role, and this woman was super talented as a marketer, but she had never led people before. And she was being asked to come in and lead this group of people. I was one of them. And her style was that she wanted to retain all of the really critical information because she was invited to more senior meetings than I was and the team was. And so we didn't know all the information. And then she would take that information and almost like hold it against, like, you don't know, I'll take care of it. And what I learned early on is the higher you put yourself on the pedestal by owning and holding the information and the decisions, the harder it is for your team to actually function cohesively, and not only function, but then grow and develop and roll. And so that was like a really early lesson. I think the second situation that came to mind was a situation where I had a leader that was so much of a micromanager. It almost didn't matter the work that I was doing. The leader wanted to come in and change it because it needed to be the way that she wanted it on like little decisions. Like big decisions were different, but there was I could never figure out where I could contribute in a way that would actually matter. And And so I had gone from being like a really high performer, really well thought of, performing at a really high level to like almost overnight being like feeling like I couldn't move, I couldn't think, I couldn't act, I couldn't behave because I was working for a leader that wasn't allowing me to do the things that had made me successful at that point. And in that situation, as much as I addressed it head on, what I suddenly found myself doing was that situation didn't just isolate to me. Like that micromanaging style worked all the way down in the organization. And I found myself in a place of almost needing to protect my team in a way where I was spending so much effort trying to make sure that they had space and freedom to think and to operate and grow and develop. And so I was kind of battling, two things at the same time. And it really just taught me like, we do have to give people space and freedom to think. And if there's a difference of opinion or a mistake, make sure that they're getting the direct feedback so that they actually know how to improve.
Yeah. How did you end up managing that whole situation, right? Because I think there's a lot of people that are listening to this that may be feeling the same way. So what did you do?
In hindsight, honestly, I don't recognize how I got through it. It's a bit of a blur. I was in very much like this will sound strange. I felt like I was in a survival mode. I got to a place, I centered myself in a place where I recognized this wasn't going to happen forever. And I recognized that what was happening, what didn't fit the culture of the organization. And I knew that I had to show up as a leader to help work with that. I didn't get to choose the style. I didn't get to choose the behavior. That individual received my feedback. I continued to deliver on the projects I needed to, but it was much more difficult to find success in that kind of a model. And then in the end, when we would deliver something, it's really weird. It never felt rewarding. It never felt like we get to the finish line of pick a project, and it never felt like, man, look at the work we just did. That was so much better.
Yeah. It was just relief to be done with it.
Right.
It was completely, and an entire tenure, Josh, felt that way. And it felt like relief. And the question that you just asked was something that some of my peers had asked. And they're like, how did you get through that period? And I hadn't realized as much that others saw it as well. So so it is pretty interesting.
I'm surprised, like, because as you were saying, describing this leadership style and that situation, it had to have been hard not to get burned out during that, because you're protecting your team. How did you not burn out during that time?
There probably were days and moments that I did. I think, for me, the job only accounts for a certain piece of, who I am and what I do. Right. So
yes.
I really had to rely, a lot more on family, on friends, on faith, on the things that were happening outside of that situation at work. Like I had to have some balance in that regard because there wasn't balance at work. It didn't feel rewarding. And so you can go into that, like for me, really, really tight, close family situation. So my family's always been there, like no question. My friends, like I got a great group of friends. I can turn to them, at any time, no matter what the situation is. So we'd still go have fun. We'd still go do the things that we do. And I wasn't talking about work. Like that wasn't something I wanted. When I left the office, it wasn't something I wanted to talk about. And so, and then, clearly faith kind of grounds you through those moments. So for me, putting those things together gets you through whether it's the good times or those times. But I think that's probably where I found some balance.
It's great advice. It's really great advice. And whether you lean into your faith or people that know you, it's like, it's a reminder of the truth of who you are as a person, who you are as a leader, despite what maybe somebody else above or beside or below you is telling you. That reminder is really important. I don't care who you are. You're not immune to feeling a certain way if you're getting into an environment that's negative. And so those are great tangible things people can do as they navigate through. Because I mean, as we're talking to leaders, Scott, we hear a lot of the same things. It's like there's a lot of uncertainty. There's tons of change going on. You just mentioned change of leadership, whatever it is. There's adversity. There's challenges. There's a lot of pressure that's there. What are you seeing? And going into 2026, what are you seeing are some of the biggest challenges or changes that are going on? And what advice would you give leaders that are listening to this podcast?
Yeah, I think there's a few. I mean, look, it would be difficult almost to be in any conversation right now where at some point AI isn't surfacing as, a solution, and what I'm finding is maybe like two different things are happening with this AI conversation from my point of view. I think one, there's a conversation of like AI can solve everything. We need AI here and here, and it's like a bit of a blanket concept of like, we'll allow AI to do this, it'll make us better, which I don't subscribe to. And I am a fan of AI, but I think the other thing that I'm starting to notice is with the advent of technology and AI being even a piece of that, knowing how to motivate our team to keep the human element, human skill sets sharp in terms of like, how are we going to interact and change? And so as I get older in my career and more experience, I can't do things the way that I did, 25 years ago.
Right.
It's not an option. So I'm having to also constantly evolve and question, how am I going to act, in this new environment, and how am I going to help lead my team through it, without shutting down innovation, without feeling like, I'm against AI. In fact, I'm actually in the middle of building an entire AI infrastructure for a specific project we're working on. But I'm also trying to be really thoughtful about what is the problem that we're trying to solve, and where specifically does a tool like AI help us? Does it make us better? And how can I be open to that without allowing AI to just take over everything? And so I don't know if that totally answers the question, but as I think about one of the big trends that I was sitting with consultants a week ago, having a lot of dialogue on this exact topic. We're trying to be thoughtful about where to allow innovation to help us, not hinder us.
Yeah, I think as you were talking through that, two really important parts, like you said, leaning into where AI is most impactful and what does it mean for your organization, for your team, and how do you kind of simplify all these tools and things that are being thrown out? Because AI that's a big blanket term, right? But what does it mean to the people that you're leading? That's one piece. The other piece, which I get really excited about this, and you mentioned it, it's that human approach, that human centric approach. That's where the value as a leader, AI can't replace that. It can't, the curiosity around like some of the questioning and getting to know somebody, and the sitting down and having a meal with them, going on a walk, whatever it is as a leader, that human centric, people are so thirsty for that because AI has really dumbed down a lot of some of the things and automated a lot of things. But they can't automate this, right? This human centric approach, these conversations, the interactions. And so I think those are two really great things that you just talked about. And as a leader, I'm constantly trying to figure out, how do I get better at showing up, bringing value, and doing things that no computer or bot can do.
Yeah, it's about, you nailed it, DJ. It's about understanding humanity, and humans are snowflakes. There's no one of us are exactly like the other person. Even identical twins are different, right? And so I think one of the things that AI, how big would that computer have to be to figure that out? You know what I mean? Like it's got to be like Empire State Building size, right? If maybe just all of Manhattan size, I don't know, right? But it's like it's the fact that we're so many, how humans tick. It's just so different from each other. And there's trends and there's things that are similar, but everybody's going to be different.
That's right, no doubt. Is and so these projects you talked about, the AI project that you're working on. Is there anything else that you're really excited about that as we go into this year, that you're like, man, I'm super excited about this initiative, this project as we enter into 2026?
Yeah, look, there's always projects I'm pretty excited about for the year. I think there's maybe two things that I'm trying to help influence that I think will be a focus for us this year. I think one, I've noticed it, this part of the business I've been in for about 10 years. And I feel like the pace of play it's constantly busy. There's always more to do than there is time to do it. And I feel like one of the focus areas this year is really being clear on prioritization. So that the top two, maybe three things that we really want to hit A++ with, we do. And the organization has confidence and we have the impact that we want. And prioritization, especially in the time where you don't feel like you have enough people, enough resources, enough time, prioritization always comes to the surface of like what we can't do and reframing that into what we can do by being really, really deliberate with what we're going to prioritize. And the things that we're not going to prioritize and we're going to deprioritize, being really clear to the individuals that folks need to understand, like it's actually not something we're going to be able to spend the time and effort on that we'd like, so that we can deliver something else. And so prioritization is a conversation that I've been having with my leadership team and will continue. I think that that's one. I think the second thing is also helping the organization get to a place where we don't talk about the work that we did, but we focus on the impact that we had. And impact is really different because on the front end of pick any of the projects, and it could be any of the roles I've been in, if on the front end we're really clear with what we want to achieve, then the work happens. On the back end, the impact is exactly what we did. How did we impact what it is, what we were trying to cause? How did we create a behavior change? And it helps get us out of a conversation where we feel like we need a laundry list of tasks for the year, but we get into a place where we're spending a lot more of our time and effort talking about the impact that we had because we actually prioritized the right things and helped align the organization to it. So for me, those are the two big things that have been top of mind as we kind of entered into the year that we'll continue to try to focus and, evolve, I think, within my team.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so funny because you're talking about, and we've talked about this before on this podcast, but I'll bring it up again: the self-determination theory, and it's a theory of motivation that was studied at the University of Rochester. And the three elements that come out that increase motivation are competency, autonomy, and relatedness. And the thing that you keep coming back to is that relatedness. Does this thing have meaning? Am I a part of something bigger than myself? Do I have an impact? Does it matter? Right? And you even mentioned it for yourself. The times where you felt like the worst in your world was when you felt like all I was doing was tasking and just tasking to try and not be wrong versus tasking to have something have meaning in it. And I just love that. I think that's amazing.
That's cool. It's huge. It's huge for teams. I mean, I'm not a huge college football fan. I know that's probably a hot take right there, but last night, it is what it is, man.
Yeah.
But last night we know that Indiana won the national championship. You go back 3 years ago, they might have had 2 or 3 wins. This guy comes in, takes a group of 2-3 star athletes in the midst of portal, NIL, all the things, and goes and wins 11 games or whatever his first year, and then a national championship the second year. That doesn't happen because he had the greatest players, and you can insert, if you're in the pharmaceutical industry, greatest products, right? Whatever it is. It doesn't happen because the environment's better for him, because actually, I think everybody would argue that the environment for a school like Indiana, with, again, NIL and all the money and the portal and all that, is not great for them. But it does happen if you can get a group collectively to believe in something bigger and have purpose and believe that they can make a big impact. And that's what they did. They get a lot of belief to, again, as somebody that doesn't love college football or watch it a ton, I thought about it in terms of, how am I leading my team? How am I leading my organization? How am I leading the mission of Limitless Minds to really go on and make a huge impact? And so that's, stories like that give you belief around that purpose and impact. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Scott. It's really good stuff.
So in terms of your own impact on others, are there things that you do on a daily basis? Do you have any specific habits or things that you do? Either, we always talk about getting ready to be ready. The things that you do there, or are there things that, hey, this is a process that I do every single day, and I'm, when I do that, it really helps me out as a leader.
There's probably a few things. It's probably mostly related to routine, to be really honest. when I'm in the office and I'm in meetings, I need to be on, and my focus is on work and on the team and on people. To get ready for that, I start my day with exercise. I get up, whether it's 30 minutes or whether it's an hour, I start the day kind of clearing my head, getting my mind and body right. And like that happens. It's the routine, a shower, I get ready. And then I think some of you know, so I drive about an hour and a half to get to the office. So I've got an hour and a half to get my mind right, whether that's listening to a podcast, book, occasionally calls. Folks don't want to talk on the phone as much anymore. That's okay. But like for me, I use that time like really constructively. And so, I'll have folks that say, geez, how is it possible you could spend 90 minutes in a car? I show up, I'm ready to go. By the time I've gotten up, exercised, taken a drive to get to the office, and I'm ready to go, I'm prepared. I'm in that space. It's, once you step on the field, so to speak, then I'm ready to go. And I go hard all day. And when I leave, I do the same process. I wind down. I need the time. For me, that 90 minutes at the end of the day allows me to wind down so that when I walk in the door at the end of the day, my wife, my daughters are happy to be around me versus like, oh my gosh, what happened at the end of the day? And so I know it sounds simple, but that little bit of routine on both ends of the day kind of helps me, focus and be more productive when I'm here.
No question. And Josh, your wife, when I was talking to her last week we did a CEO forum talk, Scott, in Sarasota, and Josh's wife surprised us and showed up to the talk, and
snuck in. She paid a guy in the back. She said, "Hey, caterer guy, let me in."
And Josh was going over his routine for the day, and she was telling me, she goes, yeah, he does it every day, walks over that bridge and he sets his intention. Yeah. And, and it was like, and so it's a common, anybody listens to this podcast, again, success leaves clues. It's something that we can all learn from in terms of, when you do things on a routine like that, especially if they're positive, that it will set you up for success. The other thing that it does is the brain loves consistency like that. And so it starts to decrease some of the anxiety, some of the things that can pop up randomly throughout the day. So from a brain perspective, this stuff works, and there's a lot of science that proves that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Now I want to know though too, because like Scott just mentioned it, let's do a bunch of podcasts and stuff like that. What's a good, like, for the listeners out there, Scott, what's a podcast that you listen to? What do you got? I mean, besides
shameless plug. Yeah, of course. He's fishing here, Scott.
That's right. Yeah, it's probably not as motivating for everybody else, but I think you guys know I'm a huge Denver sports fan, right? So especially right now with my Denver Broncos getting ready to go into the championship game. So my connection back into Colorado from the times where I lived there tends to be through podcasts, where that's where I tend to get a little bit more of the detail that I like. So like this morning, I listened to 2 podcasts on the way in to get an update now that our quarterback's injured and we have a backup. Like, okay, what do people think? I know what I think. So like I spend my time doing stuff like that. I don't spend as much time probably getting like deep on like big, meaningful like leadership podcasts or business podcasts. Like when I do that, and sometimes I do, but sometimes like I almost always go like straight to work, and then I'm like my brain, I'm a little bit less like relaxed when I walk through the door. I've already got like 10 ideas of things I need to work on. So I tend to be a little bit
running
more,
through the door instead of walking through it.
That's it.
It's funny.
Yeah,
it's funny.
There's a book that I'm reading right now by Jeb Blunt. It's called The AI Edge. It's an audio book. I read most of my books through audiobooks. But that, just based on what we were talking about earlier,
is that actually reading or is that listening?
You know what? It's funny. Harry and I, we actually, I think you can go back on one of the podcasts. Harry and I had a whole conversation about this. Is that reading or listening? Yeah. So I'll have to find, Mari, we'll have to find in the show notes. We'll put what podcast that was. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I'm going to say it's reading. But anyways, that book gives a lot of good, tangible things around, how to utilize AI in business today. And
Okay.
and what I found is that when, you know, when I do read that book, and I can't read it all the time. Like I can't. I mean, I read it at different times. So like if I'm exercising, I have to listen to podcasts, more short kind of
Oh,
spurts. If I'm driving and or like I cut my hair, that's another time I listen to books. And so I can do a little bit deeper thinking, and that's when I'll read an audiobook. And so that's how I balanced it. But that AI Edge is a really, really good one if you guys haven't read it.
The AI Edge, great one to listen to.
Great one to listen to.
listen.
I
love it.
couldn't resist.
That's right. That's
No,
right.
I think you make a great point though about just in terms of like balance, right? Because we will do that as leaders. Like it can be all consuming, and it can be, and you're thinking about it all the time, and you never have that chance to kind of reset. What we know about physical human bodies, right, is that in stress, i.e., exercise, you are actually not getting stronger. You're actually hurting your body. You're breaking the muscles down. The strength occurs during rest and recovery. That's when the strength gains actually occur, when the muscles kind of form back together and they get stronger. And so it sounds like, a little bit of what you're saying too, in terms of leadership, is like, I get better as a leader when I can just detach a little bit and I can listen to Denver sports and I can worry about whether Sean Payton is going to dial up the right defense, to stop the immortal and amazing Drake May. It's like, those kind of things. But that being said, we know we're kind of up against it in terms of time. For the listeners out there, I think one of the things that for me, DJ, success leaves clues. We always talk about success leaves clues. So the things that jump out. So Scott, we're going to feed back to you now. Some of the stuff that really jumps out for me was, walk alongside and put your arm around as a leader, right? Understand, do what he called the listening tour.
Man,
That's a phenomenal.
That's a mic drop moment.
That's a mic drop right there.
I love that.
Go out before you start making decisions of change, before you start creating change in an organization. Really understand what's going on to everybody in that organization if you can. And so those were the two giant things that jumped out at me.
I really love the whole curiosity and asking great questions so that you can start to uncover the true pain points that, will help you then utilize some of all this great experience that you have as a leader to help solve for whatever challenge that you're faced with. So I love that. And I love the human-centric approach. Like that's something that I'm going to be thinking about all day in terms of how do I continue to show up, and find value and bring value as a human. And that's another huge piece and takeaway that I got today.
Yeah, really, really, really thankful for you, Scott. If I don't know, you're on LinkedIn, right? Is that a good place to find you?
Follow that man on
pump out any content out there?
I am on LinkedIn. Yes.
All right, perfect. So I think that's the best place for people to find Scott if they want to comment or connect with him at all. Other than that, got anything else, DJ?
No, man. Listen.
Got anything else, Scott? Anything else from you?
No, well, I do. I know Scott loves the Denver Broncos. So I just want to wish him good luck here over the next couple of weeks as we lead up to the Super Bowl. You said, again, didn't watch a ton of football this weekend. I did see that they won, but I didn't realize they lost. You said the quarterback is hurt? Is Nix hurt?
Bo Nix is out. Broke his ankle.
Yeah, like second to last play of the game, he broke his ankle.
Is that right? Yeah. Oh my gosh! Who's playing backup for him then?
So Jarrett Stidham. So fortunately, we like Jarrett Stidham, and only a fan could say we think we're good. But look, I think it's that next man up mentality.
Yeah.
But it'll be a fun game next week, and it's a home game for the Broncos against the Patriots.
There you go.
The led by the immortal and amazing Drake May. Just so you know, just as a Patriots fan.
Did he come out of your academy?
Yeah. No, he's just amazing. He's just an amazing human being.
I figured there was some connection.
I don't know anything. I have no other connection other than I'm a huge Patriots fan.
But that's something I learned last week too. When you said that on our call, we had a team call, and you said you're a huge Patriots fan. I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's awesome, man. All right,
undercover.
Let's go.
Undercover, fantastic. Yeah.
There you go.
I wasn't curious enough. I wasn't curious enough, Scott, with him and his football.
That's it. Well, awesome, Scott. Thank you again so much. And as we say here at Limitless Minds all the time, you don't have to be sick to get better.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
job, man.
Appreciate it.